All right, for this tutorial, we're going to be making a paper doll puppet, a cardboard paper puppet, 3D, that could be used in a diorama, it could be in a stop motion, it could be for another type of sculpture of some kind. You'll need scissors, glue stick, a quarter of a piece of paper, so I pre-cut a standard piece of paper into fourths, and I'm just using recycled cardboard that's the same size. These are about, let's say maybe 4 by 6, 5 by 4, something like that. Okay, it's an approximate size there. You know, your puppet might need to be bigger or smaller depending on what you're going to be using it for. You want to think simple for these puppets. You don't want to go too complicated. So I've got some examples here that I've made. Very simple shape person. I sort of call them bottle or blob people. Here I have a person who's got a little more detail, and we've got the feet. This person I've abstracted, right? So we don't see the whole thing. We don't see one of the legs. So you can have arms going out. It can go horizontal. You'll notice in all of these that I'm trying to use as much of the paper as possible. So I'm trying to get as close to the edge of the paper as possible. Especially if you're doing this for the first time, working larger is going to be easier because you can cut the details more easily. And so just, you know, if you're starting out, make it simple, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and draw another one just for fun, and I'm just thinking about different types of characters. So this one's going to be, I have sort of a comedian hero. Maybe this is a mysterious stranger over here. I don't know, my dog, maybe the dog is a lifeguard. Maybe the dog is, the dog could be a warrior, could be a hero. You know, we can play with these things, right? As artists. So here I'm going for an artist, and I'm going to go for a sort of typical. I'm doing a profile view on this one. And you do want to make sure you've got a decent amount of space for the base, the bottom of it. So if you're going with, I could say 4 fingers wide, right? Over here with the dog, I've got the 2 sets of feet, and if I were to cut it out, it would be, you know, 2 fingers wide, 2 fingers wide, right? So the one that I'm drawing right now is about 3 fingers wide. You can give your character their object to hold in advance, or you can make an object that you want to glue on later. So I'm going to do this as have it be an object to glue on later, or tape on later, so that I can take it on and off. And I want an apron here just to protect the clothing with some pockets. Okay, so simple, right? I'm going to cut it out first on paper, and just because of design, and this is a personal choice, aesthetic, I am going to cut right next to the black line. If you don't want the pencil line to show, then cut inside of the line. I sort of like the look of the, it's sort of like an illustration when I leave a little bit of a bit there for it to go. So I'm going to cut. Now, because I left the mouth off of this one, I could also, if I'm going to use these for a stop motion animation. So I could make a paper mouth that is a frown, is a smile, is a laughing mouth. I could have like 3 different mouths, and I can tape them on, and then I can change them so that my character has a different expression during the movie. If you draw it on, that expression is permanent, right? It's going to stay the same through the whole thing. So I'm going to put the glue on. And I want to leave a little extra over here that I can use. So I'm just going to use the lid of the glue stick because it's nice and flat and smooth, to really get the edges pressed down. I noticed I missed the glue there. Okay. And then I'm just going to cut out again. Now, when you're cutting cardboard, one of the tricks for cutting cardboard is not to cut it out all in one line, right? I cut all the way around the silhouette. When you're cutting cardboard, it's much easier to cut out triangle and rectangle shapes. So I just cut this shape out. I'm not trying to go all the way around. I might cut all the way down here. This one seems like that's a pretty simple line. It's not very complicated. I'm not going to try to cut into that hair right now, though, if I want that detail. So this is why, again, simple designs are important, because the more complicated your silhouette or outline of the shape, the harder it is to cut out. So here I'm just going to cut that little triangle out because it's kind of a nice detail. Okay. I'm going to have to come back to that, but and then cutting a simple shape, a triangle out, and working my way towards these little details, right? It just makes it easier to cut. You get a nicer cutting. So the finished piece will be, okay. The leftover pieces, now if you don't have any leftover, that's okay. You can use something, another scrap from something else. But you're going to use the leftover pieces, because we're trying to be conscientious here, are going to be what you use to make the base so that it can stand. Okay? So, go. All right, that piece just doesn't want to come out right now. So I'm going to use this piece and this piece. They don't need to be very big. These are, you know, a little bit longer than this, but thinking sculpturally, in order to make it stand, it needs to balance the character. So I'm going to start with longer than I think it needs to be, and then I can always cut it shorter, right? So I'm just going to cut, and I want to cut the same distance into the pieces. And I'm going to draw it with a pencil first, or with the marker, but you can see here, it's a little line. And I'm just going to cut in about halfway, not quite halfway, but about halfway. Okay. If you've got good enough scissors that you can cut through both pieces at once, bonus. I recommend you cut sort of, so I'm cutting in on the side of the marker line and the other side, a little bit of a triangle. You can always make the cut, the space wider. It is hard to make it narrower. Okay. So now I'm going to wedge the base in there, and it stands up, right? So you could make these shorter. Again, I would cut small pieces at a time off of it so that it doesn't tip over, right? Balance weight. If you wanted to have it, so like if I want to use this in stop motion, my next step would be I would want to color this, but I would also want to get another piece of paper and I would glue the paper onto the back here. So I'm going to put the glue right on the cardboard this time because it's the exact shape that I want. And get a good amount of glue right up to the edges. Go ahead and turn it over. And then I'm going to rub. And it's going to show the line of where I cut, right? The edges of it, but I can also make sure that I get. And then when I flip it over this direction again, and I can cut out the outline. And now, since I want to use it in stop motion, I can redraw and color the back side, and then my character will be able to walk across the screen to the left and to the right. And instead of like right now, if this character is walking across, it's got the cardboard, right? So my character right now can only go one direction. And maybe you only want your character to go to one direction, and that's fine. So again, it's all about how you want to use your tool, right? This puppet has just become a tool. Now the other thing that I mentioned was if you wanted to make little shapes and things that you can use. So if I'm using this for stop motion, and I want to have this be a painter, and maybe I want them to pick up a paintbrush and put down a paintbrush, I might draw a paintbrush on the piece of paper here, and I'm going to make it a little bigger than it needs to be just because, you know, stop motion animation and we're playing and it's a little exaggerated. And I know I didn't finish cutting out around the silhouette yet, but we'll get there. Okay, so I've got my paintbrush, and then I can and if you have an X-Acto knife, sometimes that's handy for getting into details, cutting tool. But now I can have the painter hold the paintbrush, and if I put just a tiny little piece of tape, so itsy bitsy piece of tape here, and I roll it, I can put it, let's see, I'm going to put it on the back side of the hand here so that it looks like the brush is in the hand. And now my painter can paint, but I could move the brush as part of the movie. So the brush can move up and down. The arm can't move up and down. If I'd made that separate, then I could do that, right? So I could do that on like a dog tail, or maybe the hat on the jester here, the comedian. Maybe I want the hat to be able to move, so I'm going to do that as two pieces and it gets taped on there like that. These are all options with your cardboard paper doll puppet. So this is an opportunity to be really playful and have fun and make something silly that tells a little bit of a story. So enjoy. I'm looking forward to seeing your puppets.